Okay, Shavua Mevorach. We want to thank everybody again for coming. This is the last session for with our loloian. We're going to have a hefsek, you know. There was till after Purim we will see what happened. As you know, this video is Parashat Shekalim. Shekalim, right? I'm talking about money, but I don't want to talk about money. But just saying, Baruch Hashem, we are entering the khodesh adar. And khodesh adar is a time that you have to be besimcha. You know, Rabbi Yishai said, "Mishenichnas adar ma'avim besimcha." From the time that the molad comes, you don't have to wait for Rosh Chodesh. When molad comes, you start to be happy and get the mood of the mood of the chodesh. Chodesh adar, Baruch Hashem. It's a pasuk asher nefach miyagun lesimcha. It was a sadness, right? But Baruch Hashem made it to the simcha, and that's what you have to show. Shalom bayit also, you know, always you have to one of the main ingredients is to be besimcha, to be happy with what you have with your wife. You know that you have. You know, you have to sameach bechelko. Sameach bechelko. You know that you know, as Rabbi said. There was a session. If you got married, Baruch Hashem, it was a sign that it was a big sign that you are meant together. You're meant to be together, and hopefully, B'ezrat Hashem, it should be something lasting. I just want to tell you something. As expensive as I know, when you start like a dating or something, always you need the money. You need a what do you call it? A coach. Right? You need a coach these days. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things that the girls they want, some things that the boys they want. You know, the same thing about the husband. Husband expectation, wife expectation, and this is a big issue nowadays, and that needs to be worked out. So that's what Rabbi's job is here to guide us about what what thing you should not expect, what you cannot expect. And B'ezrat Hashem, to that you should have shalom bayit, B'ezrat Hashem, ma'avesim shana, and all the best for you.
Amen.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have the Zoom.
Are you able to send a link to the group chat, please?
I did. I sent it Erev Shabbat.
Which group chat?
I'm not sure, but I could give it to you right now. Just give me a second. You want to write it? You know the ID you want to write it down is 997?
Oh, I found it, 808.
Yeah, that's the one.
Thank you.
Okay. Even so, we know B'ezrat Hashem. First of all, Shavua Tov. You know, thanking everybody to put their time to come. I came late for two reasons. A rabbi has to be late, otherwise not a rabbi. But honestly, they said that they need some more time for people to get, especially the ones that keep, you know, according to Rabbeinu Tam, the Shabbat finishes like half an hour later. So we're holding by the third commandment that B'ezrat Hashem, we go through it. And you know, the third commandment is do not say God's name in vain. Don't say God's name for no purpose, which basically, you know, as the Mefarshim, the commentators explain, we have to have honor for God's name. If somebody has honor for God, doesn't want to disrespect it, so he's not going to mention Hashem's name for no reason. So basically what the Torah, what God is telling us, you know, after we enter marriage with Him, do not disrespect or put down my name. What this teaches us in general means that we're not really supposed to put down our spouses. Definitely sometimes things happen that we don't like it to happen, but there's two parts to it. First of all, in front of children, we should never argue and put down our spouses. That's number one. It should never be done. If it's done, obviously, first of all, both parents lose respect in front of the kids, but worse than that, our kids will be afraid to get married. But even let's say if you are in our, so they always say our differences have to work out in private. When the children are not around, we should never involve them. But besides that, even if you're all alone, there are no children there, so obviously there's no reason to put them down. There's a way to discuss our differences, not by screaming and putting them down. You know, to actually bring a story. This was a true story that happened. You know, I resonate with that. There was a husband and wife that they went shopping. You know, the joke that I say, good husbands shop with their wives, but better husbands shop for their wives. So I don't know if men like that or not, but anyways, whatever the situation is, they went shopping, and then the woman obviously forgets to buy one of the cereal boxes that she really loves a lot. So it tells the husband, honey, could you please go pick up the cereal box that I like? You know, some men have problems, and my wife sends me to go shopping, I get lost. Because if I find something on sale, I buy 10 of them till next year Pesach. So we have it there, you know, even if you have no use for it. And besides that, I get lost. You know, you see all the sales, you enjoy it. When my wife goes shopping, she buys in 1, 2, 3. She's in and out. So this guy gets lost. So then the woman standing in line and the cashier is there, you know, to punch in everything that they bought, she gets very nervous. So she turns around to the lady or the man behind her, and he says, look at these men. They go through the whole store to buy something. You know, they can't even find the box that they need. So definitely she was, you know, a little bit or a lot annoyed. But again, what did she really gain in this story that happened? Nothing, except putting out the frustration and, you know, putting down the husband. So again, if you have differences, we should speak to them very, very nicely. By the way, if you want to get certain things that puts our spouses down, you know, we spoke about this last time. There's a lot of nice things that you can even learn when you go online, like, you know, Chabad.org or aish.com. You know, there's a lot of, you know, marriage counselors that they write good things. This is written by a lady, Mrs. Debbie Gutfreund. So if you want to look at the title, 8 things you should never say to your spouse, because these are things that puts them down. So I mean, you could research it yourself. And now I just found a new article. They found 10 things, not just 8 things. But let's go through the 8 things that they write down that it should never be in the dictionary between a husband and wife. Let's go through a couple of them. Try to go through 8 of them. Number 1, let's say if our spouses make a mistake. So the first reaction we have, what is wrong with you? Basically what I'm saying, there's inherently something wrong with my spouse. There's nothing wrong with him or her. They made a mistake. When we say the word, what's wrong with you, like you're saying there's something inherently or inside them that is wrong or crooked. So they always say if something happens, you know, let's not say that. Mistake happened, let's try to fix it. So that's one of the words in the dictionary should never be said. What's wrong with you? Second one, imagine we ask our spouse to do something and then they don't do it, or it's taking them too much time to do it. So our reaction is, forget it, I'll do it myself. Like the word, forget it, I'll do it myself. Not what can I do to help you. What's wrong with that? Forget it, I'll do it myself. What I'm saying is, you know what, I have no patience for you, you're incompetent, you really can't do anything, forget it, just forget, you're not made for this. I gotta do it myself instead of you. So that's the second thing, you know, that therapists always say should never be said. If they don't do their job, you know, I want to help you, what could we do to get the thing done? Another thing that should never be in the dictionary, you know, imagine the husband comes home late, or when the husband comes home, supper is not ready. So she tells him, you never come home on time, or you never make supper ready on time. First of all, never is not true. Does the husband always come home late? She never makes supper on time. So the words are not true, but in addition to that, definitely such words will never motivate the person to do what he's supposed to do. Because the reaction would be the wife or the husband feels, no matter what I do, I'm never good. The days that I make the supper on time, he doesn't recognize that. Doesn't say thank you for making the supper on time. The days that he really works hard to come home on time, she doesn't recognize it. She says, you never come home on time. You never make supper ready. That means you're never good. So obviously these words don't motivate them to become good. We should never use the word never or always. Another thing, imagine the wife makes supper. I don't know why. Men love food, you know, sorry. They always say their stomach is very important for them. By the way, if they get fat, we tell the ladies to tell them there is more to love. Never criticize them. Many good husbands get fat because just in case their wives get pregnant, they don't want them to feel, you know, they're overweight. And then once the women lose their weight because they gave birth, they keep it for the next child. They still stay fat. So shouldn't feel bad. These are the good husbands. But anyways, putting all the jokes aside, imagine they come home and the food is not ready, or food is ready. Oh, that's all you made? That's it? That's all you made? Or let's say the husband goes shopping. Oh, that's all you bought? So, instead of, thanking them, this is wrong. Why? Because instead of thanking them, if they don't do enough based on our expectations, so we show them, what you did is very nice. I appreciate it. But again, even if you want to criticize, next time, maybe we could do it better. But not to recognize the good that they did, just to criticize, that's all you did, that's all you bought, obviously puts the person down. Another thing that, many times it happens. Imagine the husband or the wife do something wrong, and then they're criticized. So the simplest thing is, what, you're right, I'm sorry, I try not to make it happen again. But our reaction is, but you did the same thing yesterday. I did wrong, you did the same wrong thing yesterday. So that's when the fight continues. So if, let's say, we did something wrong, and we really did something wrong, the best thing is to accept it. I had one time a teacher that he said, it's good to be right, it's important to be right, but it's more important to have shalom bayit. You don't always have to be right. So if he says, you did something wrong, accept it and don't continue. Another thing is, many times, so far 5, is that enough or you want more? Anyways, just bothering you. There's another one, let's say our spouse asks us something, we say, whatever. I didn't realize this. Let's say they say, what kind of supper do you need? Whatever. Sometimes really we mean whatever. But in the eyes of our spouse, maybe whatever means, I'm not in the mood of talking to you. Whatever. Just leave me alone. So they say it's better sometimes when we need something, we should actually say what we need instead of saying whatever. That was number 6. Number 7, I guess going on vacation is important for some people. Let's say we never go anywhere, we never do anything. That's similar to the word never, but if you want to go on vacation, but it teaches us, let's not put the burden on our spouse. If there are things that we like to do, why do we put the full burden on the shoulder of our spouse? You want to go on vacation, so you never take me anywhere. Instead of complaining, let's plan to go on a vacation together. So don't blame it on the other one. And the worst one that actually should never be said, and I think we spoke about it in the 2nd commandment, when we tell our spouse, why can't you be like the other person? Why can't you cook like the other person? Yeah, why can't you be more like the other person? So obviously this thing, comparing our spouse to somebody else, is very hurtful. And basically what I'm saying is, I wish I wasn't married to you. I wish I was married to the other person, even though I'm not saying it. But that is the impression that goes out. So again, the 3rd commandment, that we should never put our spouses down, part of it is the vocabulary that we use. So these are the 8. You could actually check it in h.com. And the title is 8 things you should never say to your spouse. That's 10 things. Just wanted to clarify a couple things in this thing very quickly. Number 1, even if when we say don't put your spouses down, it happens to be that I really do believe in going to therapy. I think as time goes on, more people believe that good therapists could actually be a blessing. If you say not supposed to put your spouses down, why do we push so much for therapy? But the answer is very simple. When we go to therapist, I'm not going there to put my spouse down. I just want to share a story with you before I say why we go to a therapist. There was a couple that had a problem. So we send them to a therapist. So the therapist calls me, says, Rabbi, I don't want to see that couple. I said, why? So he says, because the husband called me and he said, doctor, my wife makes a lot of trouble. Can you make her think like me? That's exactly what the guy said. So he says, if he's coming with such an attitude that his wife has to totally change, I don't want to see him. Anyways, we pushed, and actually he did see them, and he was able to help them a lot. Baruch Hashem. But again, we don't go to therapy to change our spouse or put them down. We go with respect. We tell the therapist, no, I love my spouse, I love my wife, I love my husband. We see many things eye to eye. There are certain areas that we don't agree. We need your guidance to help us. But I'm not going there to put my spouse down. And number 2, we go for a purpose. We don't go there just to let our frustration. It might happen. There's a lot of baggage, so you got to let your frustration go. But we don't go there just to let our frustration. We're going for a purpose. So that's why, again, going to therapy is a good thing. Just, a couple little advices, whenever especially if you have newlyweds, people that just get married, and issues definitely do come. Number one, never discuss it with single people, because they can't help you, they don't know anything. Besides that, if they see there's marriage problems, they get scared to get married. I'm not kidding. I don't want to go into stories because I'm online right now, so people might find out what I'm talking about. But I've seen actually a couple of people that are afraid to get married because when their friends got married, they always called them when they had trouble. So I told them, tell me, when your friend went on a cruise, did he call you? No. When they had the first baby, they had a good time. Did they call you? No. So of course, they only call you when they're miserable. When they're having a good time, they don't call you. So never discuss it, with people that are not married. Usually it's not advisable to discuss it with younger couples because they themselves are going through the same trouble. Besides that, unfortunately, we live in a community that sometimes people think bigger than what they are. I'm going to share a story with you. There was this young lady that got married to a guy and they moved to Israel. I don't know if they were American, Israelis. The girl was from America. I don't know who the boy was, whether he was American or Israeli. Anyways, the rumors went around in America that the girl wants to get divorced. So the mother calls up after 6 months. You're going to use a name that nobody has here, so nobody gets offended. I'm sure nobody has a name Bela, right? Bela is Ashkenazi name. No Belas here? Okay. So the mother calls and he says, Bela, what's going on? Really want to get divorced? He says, no. It says, well, in our town, everybody's saying that you're getting divorced. What was the story? When we get married, obviously in the beginning, there's a lot of adjustments. You got to get adjusted to married life. In addition to that, when they move to a new country, she has to learn a new language, find new friends. He has to find a job because he moved to Israel. So one day, one of the friends from whatever, the Jewish school, Beis Yaakov, I don't know which school she went to, calls up and he says, Bela, how are you doing? So she says, I'm miserable. I wish I was back home. These are the only words that she said. So now imagine if we were married for 10 years, you would tell Bela, don't worry about it. I went through the same thing too. It's going to be good. Call me back in 6 months. I'll call you back in 6 months. I'm sure things will be better. But this young girl not being married, the way she interpreted the words, I wish I was back home, it means I wish I was divorced. I could come back home to my parents. So obviously she's not going to tell the mom of this girl, there's something wrong, maybe you should call your daughter. She told her own mother. The way it works in the world, this mother tells her best friend, the best friend tells the best friend. So after a few months, the last person that hears what's going on is the mother of the girl in Israel. So she learned a lesson not to, vent with people that are not proper people to speak to. So again, definitely we shouldn't put our spouses down. Sometimes, either we have to go to a rabbi, to a rebbetzin, even better to go to a professional, but never discuss it with people that cannot help us. Unless you want to guide, I know somebody that could help, that's fine. So this is the end of the third commandment. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to go to commandment number 4. It's actually a very fun one. If there's any questions, please ask. Go ahead. Not hard questions.
No.
Go ahead.
What do you say? Some say that the therapist or the psychologist says his own opinion when you go to counseling. What do you say to them?
Well, I would definitely suggest that you should go to a religious or at least religious-minded therapist, that he knows the world of Torah. Those are probably the best ones. If somebody does not believe in the sanctity of marriage, he thinks marriage is just like eating breakfast. So you get married, you eat breakfast. I would never recommend such a person. But someone that does believe in the holiness of marriage, that it's a godly bond, as we spoke in the first time, such people usually do not say their own opinion. They definitely make sure that it's something that goes along with the Torah. That's my experience so far. That's what I know. Anyway, so going to commandment number 4, it says, remember the day of Shabbat and keep it holy. So this is going to take us a while to go through. It's a very, very fun one. There is a Ramban, the Nachmanides, and he makes a very beautiful comment. When he says, remember the day of Shabbat, what is he talking about? What's the Torah talking about? To remember the day of Shabbat on Shabbat, you don't have to remember it. You're living through Shabbat. Remembering is only possible if the person is not here. If you're sitting in front of me, I don't have to remember you, I see you. If you're absent, I don't see you, then there is a commandment, remember me. So when the Torah says, remember the day of Shabbat, the Ramban says what it means is remember Shabbat every single day. And actually, I think the Ramban holds this is a positive mitzvah of the Torah, according to him. You know, we spoke about it last few weeks, that the Gemara says there is 613 commandments. The question is, what are the 613? So most rabbis agree what the 613 are. There's arguments in a few of them. So the Ramban holds remembering Shabbat every single day is one of the positive commandments. That's his opinion. And he says that's why in our prayers, when we pray, you know, in the morning, for example, we say the psalm, the shir of Sunday, we say as an introduction, Hayom Yom Echad Be-Shabbat. Today is the first day of the week. Now we use the word Shabbat, not Shavua. Usually the word for the week is Shavua. Nobody says tonight Shabbat Tov as a good week. We say Shavua Tov. So seemingly we should have said Hayom Yom Echad Be-Shavua. So we say Hayom Yom Echad Be-Shabbat. Shabbat has two meanings. Means Shabbat, seventh day. Shabbat also means the week. So the Ramban says the rabbis put it this way, so we have the merit to remember Shabbat every single day. That's according to the Ramban. So what does this teach us in our married life? That we should always make good memories. You know, honestly, that's what it means. Zachor, make good memories. Don't let our marriage, you know, become very, how do you say, boring. You know, in the beginning, marriage is very exciting. Two new people living in the same house. Then after a while, it just becomes routine. We get up in the morning, we go to work, we come back home, I eat my supper. Good night, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep. There's no more excitement. You know, and the truth is, unfortunately, in the United States, you know, in Iran, I remember, going back years ago, marriage only, divorce only happened if there was like abuse. Nobody got divorced because I'm bored. Oh, I don't love my husband anymore. I don't love my wife anymore. I just don't feel the connection. That's not a reason to get divorced. But again, why does that happen? Because we don't bring any good memories, no excitements in our marriage. Again, I'm not saying it's a reason to get divorced. But obviously what the Torah is telling us, when you make good memories, that brings us a lot closer. What that means, you know, young couples go to Disneyland. I don't know. You go to Disneyland sometimes. What's that ride? You go down, there's water ride, and then you get afraid. You pick up your hands, take a picture, buy it, spend $10 for it, hang it up in your room. When a birthday comes, make an exciting birthday. When your, I don't know, anniversary comes or something, you could always go on 800flowers.com, whatever it is, proflowers.com. Imagine your wife comes home and you see this package, beautiful flowers that you just bought for her. Little things. These are really things that make good memories and brings excitement in our marriage. Also, sometimes good memories are if we help our spouses. I get there soon. And again, actually, there is one of these therapists in Israel. You know, some therapists are really blessed. I know one of them from Sherman Oaks. That if husband and wife are in trouble, so he could interrogate them or whatever, question them in 45 minutes. He could figure out if there is hope for them or not. He's a Jewish guy. So anyways, there's one of them in Israel too. I mean, there's probably a lot of them. So this lady says when people have a lot of trouble and no other therapists can help them, they go to her. So she asks 4 or 5 questions. I don't know what they are, but one of them I do know. She asks them, tell me, how did you date? Right, usually when you go on a date is the most exciting time. So she says, if they smile, so that shows they still have some good memories. If there's some good memories, then there is a hope to bring them back. But if he's going to ask them, how did you date? And they just sit like this. Like no emotions. They have no good memories. So then she says, probably it's almost impossible to bring them back. We also, you know, find when children have anger against their parents. Again, I don't know too much about children. That's the next thing we have to start learning. But I remember when I went to a certain therapist, so when the kid was angry, they always told him, you know, think of a time that you had a very fun time with your father or mother. And you know, the kid closed his eyes and he was thinking about it. Honestly, I was watching him, smile came to his mouth, to his lips. He started smiling. You see, good memories bring us closer. Marriage always has ups and downs. So making these good memories brings us a lot closer during our tough times. It's very good, very important. Don't let our marriage to become you know, a little bit or too much boring. You know, there's a Rabbi Twersky. His name is Michal Twersky. He's a brother of Rabbi Yeshua, his name was Joshua? Avram Joshua Tursky. There was a big rabbi that just passed away more than a year ago. So he has a brother, Michael Tursky. He's an expert on marriage. So one time I was by one of his classes, he said a very funny statement. At least it seemed to be funny. He said, well, I want to tell all you men, love starts in the kitchen. So what is he talking about? Love starts in the kitchen. And he said, yeah, you can't get emotional when you go into the hiding chambers, when you go to your bedroom. If you find a dish that is dirty, you wash it for your wife. If you find, a pair of socks on the floor, put it into the laundry room. Because you have to show that you love your spouse in the kitchen by doing little small things. So again, besides making good memories, honestly, doing little stuff, even though I feel it's not my job, but doing little things, so that brings good memories and actually strengthens our connection with each other. So that's what he meant, love starts in the kitchen, meaning doing kind deeds to your spouse, just regular routine things, brings us a lot closer. I really don't know why. This is like, I found is a big, when the wife asks the husband, can you take the garbage out? Like men hate that. Especially if you're rushed to go to work. So you got to make a deal. Please don't tell your husband to take the garbage out when he's rushing. Tell him when he comes back home, after he eats supper. So he won't be so upset. But again, really, why does that make them so upset? I don't know. There was actually a story happened with one of the, young guys that just went to kollel. I just want to add, sometimes when we learn Torah, we feel because we are in kollel, you're like above everything else. Everybody owes us everything. I'm sitting, learning Torah the whole day. I'm holier than thou. So you can't disturb me. I just have to sit and learn. Don't tell me what to do. So there was this kollel guy that he went to his Rosh Yeshiva, and he said, I have a serious problem. My wife asks me, it's a true story, to take the garbage out. Isn't that below my dignity to take the garbage out? I'm a person that sits and learns Torah the whole day. So it's a serious halachic question in his mind. So the Rosh Yeshiva said, you know what? Let me think about it. Maybe you're right. The next day, the Rosh Yeshiva went and knocked on the door. So the guy opens the door and says, well, Rosh Yeshiva, what are you doing here? It says, because I realized, it's below your dignity to take the garbage bag out. I came here to take it out myself. Give it to me. So he didn't have to give a lecture to the student. He himself came and took it. So he got the lesson. If my Rosh Yeshiva, my Rosh HaKollel, takes the garbage out, I can definitely do that. So again, doing this little stuff definitely helps. So this was the first part. Remember the day of Shabbat, making good memories. We're going to go Be'ezrat Hashem. We're going to go Be'ezrat Hashem to the next part when he says, remember the day of Shabbat. Let's see what the day of Shabbat is. Every day, we're always busy working, getting another dollar, paying another mortgage, taking the kids to school, come back from school. Really don't have that much time with our family. When Shabbat comes, so it's a time that actually we have time for God and our family. Right? How does Friday night work? The spouse, the wife makes all the food ready. Hopefully, Friday afternoon, before Shabbat, everything is ready. The husband takes the kids to shul, to the synagogue, to the Beit Knesset Friday night. Beautiful prayers. And when they come home, really, what happens at the Shabbat table? Okay, husband and wife talk. How was your week? Then, they talk with the kid. How was school? Be'ezrat Hashem, when everybody has the merit, when they have children, they send them to yeshiva, to, whatever, Hebrew day school. When the kids come home, it's a real pleasure. Tell me, what was the parsha of the week? You test your kids. That's what happens Friday night. You're spending time with the family. Also, Shabbat morning is the same thing. Always make this joke. I'm a Chabadnik, so I could make the joke about them. Chabad starts happening at 10 in the morning. Nobody gets up at 10 in the morning. So they have breakfast with their wife at home, then they go to Beit Knesset. So they have even extra time with the family before. But again, officially, they pray late because they're supposed to learn Chassidut before. In yeshiva, they learn Chassidic philosophy from 8 to 9:30, then they start praying. But again, whatever it is, they prepare themselves for the prayers. But again, they even have people that go to Chabad shuls, they go to have a full breakfast, without bread, obviously. With their family, then they go to shul. So then when you come back from shul at 11, 12 o'clock, especially in the summers, you have time with the family. After the cholent, you get a big stomach ache, you go to sleep, you get up like 5 in the afternoon, let's say. What are you going to do till 8 o'clock at night? So you go to mincha at 6:30, you go to the class before. honestly, these times are made to spend time with family. You know, I'm not talking about Haredim. You know, the Haredim, yes, the lifestyle is that Shabbat is for learning, and I praise that. But I'm saying regular people, Shabbat is a time that you spend with your family. That's what it is all about. So the Shabbat tells us that you have to put time with your family. We had a few of, the rabbis when they came, they said you should go on a date with your spouse at least once a week. That's what they told us. Very, very important. Why is it important to go out? Put time for your spouse. Obviously, in the first 2 years before we have children, it's very easy. They both come home, they have plenty of time, they get home at 6, 7 o'clock at night. You could go to Kollel for an hour and learn. You could come have his supper with his wife. You could talk, till 11 o'clock and go to sleep. But once we have children, that's where it becomes a little bit challenging because both parents focus on the kids. They don't have time for each other. So that's where the rabbis always told us, make sure that you put time for your spouse. Don't say I don't have time for you, sorry. You have to put time to go out with them. There's actually an article in h.com. I think Mrs. Braverman wrote it, Emuna Braverman. She writes articles. So over there's a picture of a lady that just gave birth, and she has the baby on the shoulder, and the husband is sitting very bored. The wife says, honey, I promise, after our kids will grow up, I'll take care of you. That means for the next 15 years, don't talk to me. It's a very funny article that she writes. She's an awesome writer, Emuna Braverman. You could find it in h.com. So now again, because we have children, doesn't mean, of course, they're the main thing. You got to take care of them. But doesn't mean that a husband is not a husband anymore and the wife is not a wife anymore. So again, we had many, many rabbis. I think one of them was Rabbi Morgenstein that once came from Eretz Israel, and he said you should definitely go out with your spouse once a week. Now, I'm not saying go to the most fancy restaurant and every week spend a few $100s. Post-Biden, even one person has to go to eat, has to spend $50, $60. But it's not the money that you spend to eat. You could go to a coffee shop. You could go to a park. What we are saying is that I'm really saying my spouse is important to me. Right now, there is only God, me, and you, nobody else. Tell me how your week was. Another thing that we say in the synagogues, some of us are grandparents. I always tell the people, when their children get married, I say, remember, when you become a grandparent, you don't become a grandparent for free. You got to take care of the grandchildren so your son and daughter-in-law, your daughter and son-in-law could go on a date once a week. Of course, they love to do that. Raising the grandchildren is more fun than raising the children. Because once they start making trouble, you call their parents, come and take them. You can't do that to your children. So you only enjoy them when it's good. When they start making trouble, you call your kids, come and pick them up. So there's one story that I wanted to share this with everyone. This story is all over Chabad.org. I guess it happened with a Chabad lady, I'm not sure. There was this guy that promised he's going to take his wife out. He never did it. He was always too busy. So one day he comes home, and the wife says, you know what? One of your biggest supporters just called, and you were not home. He's going to be, let's say if he's in, I don't know where it was, let's say in Los Angeles. He's going to be in LAX at a terminal for 4 hours. And he has to wait between planes. He wants to see you from 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, for example. So, and this is the date that is coming. So the guy looks at his calendar, whatever, his cell phone, and he says, yeah, I'm not busy. So the date comes, he goes to the airport at a terminal, and he's sitting by the table. One of the biggest supporters gives him a lot of money. He's dressed up very well with a tie and everything. So when he's sitting, he sees nobody comes. After a few minutes, he finds this wonderful, beautiful wife of his. That a wife is coming all dressed up with lots of makeup, and he sits in front of him. So he says, what's going on? Is this a joke? So he says, no, I just wanted to show you that I'm your biggest supporter. And I want you to spend the next 2 hours with me. So she was a very smart lady. Didn't nag too much, She did it in a very professional way. But it was a great lesson for him. That really his biggest supporter is his own spouse. And he actually learned to spend time with his wife. My Rosh Yeshiva, should be healthy. His wife passed away a few years ago because she had an aneurysm. It was very, very sad. You know, she was like a mother to us in yeshiva, to be honest. Anyway, so later on, you know, when we went for Shiva to visit him, he was very busy with the yeshiva, day and night. So, you know, when you become a Rosh Yeshiva in the beginning, they promise to pay for all the costs. But then afterwards, there's no money. The Rosh Yeshiva becomes a fundraiser. I'm sure our mahpari is used to that. And so he was really teaching, giving shiurim, even fundraising. And then when we went to Shiva to visit him, he said that his wife told him once, his name is Ezra Binyamin. So it says, Ezra, spend time with me now, because the day will come that you will be sorry. He said it by the Shiva. He said, I didn't spend enough time with my spouse. It really touched us. You know, by that time, we were already married, so we knew what married life to a certain extent is all about. But again, while we have them, we should definitely spend time with them, not to get distracted with other stuff that is in our life. You know, Be'ez Hashem, we're going to go to the third part. The third part, it says, keep the day of Shabbat holy. So, you know, bringing Kedusha, holiness, in every part of our life is a very important thing. You know, people that are not, you know, they didn't study the Torah properly. They look at God as the government. You know, life was very good before government came, wasn't it? You could buy any toilet you want. You could build a house anywhere you want. Now they sit, you know, in the Congress and they pass laws. Now you can't paint your house the way you want. You can't even buy the lights that you like. You have to buy certain type of a light. So they said the best type of life with the government is you don't bother me, I don't bother you. Right? As long as government puts their nose in our life is the worst thing. So many people say, you know what, my relationship with God is you don't bother me, I don't bother you. But God doesn't like that. You know, every part of our life from the beginning, as soon as we wake up till we go to sleep, is regulated by the laws of the Torah. So I'm not going to say that, yeah, it's not difficult, but honestly, these regulations, sanctity, bring a lot of blessing in our marriage, in every part of it, especially in our marriage. Let's go through a couple of them. You know, again, I'm sure people that are here on the religious side, they keep these laws, but, you know, we might find people that are not religious yet, and they might think it's difficult for them to keep. You know, one of the laws of sanctity is we have to keep laws of family purity. When a woman has the monthly cycle, so the husband and wife can't be intimate unless she goes to the mikveh, right? So, you know, there was one time one of the guys, he was looking for a shidduch. So he saw a girl. And he told me, Rabbi, could you please tell this girl to go out with me? I said, you know, she's religious. She keeps laws of family purity. When he found that word, he says, Rabbi, what? I can't be with my spouse for 12 days, forget it. Like, you know, he didn't want to get married to this type of a girl. But again, this is one of the sanctities of marriage, that, you know, husband and wife cannot spend time any time that they want. It has to be regulated, right? And for men, sometimes this is very, very difficult. Why did really God make this rule? That a husband and wife are forbidden at least, I think, 11 days for the Sephardim, at least, right? But Ashkenazim is at least 12 days. And if let's say the cycle of the woman is 7-8 days, so they have to be basically half of the month, not to be intimate. So before marriage, there's no experience at all, not allowed. Not healthy at all, it's not religious at all. Even after they get married, like, you know, because they have to keep Taras HaMishpacha, so they keep away for 12 days in a month or 15 days in a month. Why is this really like, why is God like so strict? Not only that, Goyim thought that Jews have a problem with intimacy for generations. Now, thank God, they realize what a blessing it is. So this question is asked in the Gemara. I think Rab Meir asks it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So Rab Meir answers, why did God make this rule? He says, because God knows the nature of a person. If you have access to the same pleasure every day, after a while, we either get bored with that pleasure or we get disgusted with it. You know, the best example is, before I got cholesterol, I loved kubide, kebab, right? Now I can't eat it anymore. Baruch Hashem. So now imagine my wife is going to make me kebab, breakfast, lunch, and supper. The first week is awesome. But after 2 weeks, it comes out of your nose, you can't eat it anymore. You know, one of the caterers, there was one of our mashkichim, used to work by a caterer, Simon Catering. So obviously, when he works there, he has to eat. All his food that he ate, he told me himself, was rice and khodesh. So he comes on Friday night, his wife serves him again, rice and khodesh. He says, believe me, I love to eat dairy Friday night. I'm eating rice and khodesh every single day. So he couldn't stand his wife's cooking. Not his wife's cooking, the food, because he's eating it every single day. So here Rab Meir says, if a person would have access to his spouse every single day, so after a while they would become bored. They wouldn't get excited at all. But now that part of the month they can't be intimate, when she comes from the mikvah, their excitement and their love is like the day that they got married. You know, this is one of the things that we always tell young couples. Again, Shabbat is very important. You think you're not ready for it, so you need time, fine. Two things we always ask them to keep. Number one, definitely keep kashrut. Because non-kosher food, God forbid, contaminates the neshama to such a bad level that we become insensitive to godliness. I mean, even let's say if you don't want to go through Kabbalistic explanations, if you look in this week's Parshat Mishpatim that we just read, the Torah says, Anshe Kodesh Tihyun Li. I want it to be a holy nation to me. Right? And it says, Basar Trefa Basad Lo Tochelu. If you find non-kosher piece of meat, don't eat it. What's the connection of the two? God says, be holy to me and don't eat meat that is trefa. It's not kosher. So Rashi says, it's very interesting, this week's parasha, Rashi says, if you keep the laws of kashrut, you are holy, you belong to me. If you don't keep laws of kashrut, Rashi's language is nevelotu trefot. He says these two things. If you're going to eat non-kosher meat, so then ein chem sheli, you're not mine. Again, the explanation is, a Jew has to have a sensitive soul. When we eat non-kosher food, because as Kabbalah explains, there's a lot of klipa, impurity in that food, and it becomes part of our flesh and blood. So that makes us totally insensitive to God, very far from God. So this is one thing we always tell young couples to keep. Number two is definitely keep laws of family purity. For a few reasons. Number one, you always stay close. Honest, you can ask anyone that keeps the laws of family purity. They could be 50, 60 years old. But when she comes from the mikvah, it's a different thing. They never get bored. Besides that, that the Ramban in Parshat, I think it's Achremot, he writes down that God forbid, besides, sometimes there is certain, physical diseases that could come for not keeping laws of family purity, but in addition to that, it has a lot of damage to the soul of the child. He becomes totally insensitive to godliness. Many times that we have children that, are not sensitive to God, they don't even respect their parents. Part of it is because laws of family purity was not kept. So when this child was formed in the stomach of the mother, there was a certain purity that surrounded, the body of the child. So it loses the sensitivity. I'm going to, end up on this part. There's a letter, there was 3 letters from the Lubavitcher Rebbe that I saw. 3 different women wrote letters to him. These were traditional women going back in the 60s or 70s, before United States became, Baruch Hashem, so religious. You have yeshiva, schools, shuls all over. So there were these traditional people, not Shomer Shabbat, I guess, and their children actually converted to Christianity because they met a girl or a boy in college campus and they wanted to marry them. So obviously the girl's condition is, my parents say, no, you can't marry a Jew. I don't know if these days they care, but again, going to the 60s and 70s, the Christians were more religious. So the boy or the girl actually converted to Christianity. So these ladies write to the Rebbe. It was 3 different letters that I saw. Okay, we are not religious, we're traditional. We never spoke about, Yoshka, Yeshu in our houses. Why is this happening to us? So the Rebbe writes down, we can't really give general reasons. There's different reasons for many situations. But most probably, one of the main reasons why such thing happens is probably the parents, talking to the mother, did not keep the laws of family purity. And because of that, the kid's neshama was surrounded, with some type of impurity, and they're not sensitive to Judaism. So if they have to convert to other religion, so they're not sensitive and they do that. I just want to add, by the way, I don't want to cause, God forbid, any trouble. There was actually a letter from the Rebbe Nosom Rabbi Yosef. There was one time a girl that was born in a religious family, and then they called a shidduch for her, a boy that was one of the best boys in yeshiva, but he came from a non-religious family. The parents didn't keep Taharat HaMishpacha. So the girl wrote a letter, the family of the girl, to Rabbi Yosef, should we consider this shidduch? Our daughter born in a religious family, we kept taharat hamishpacha. He comes from a non-religious family, never kept taharat. The parents didn't keep taharat hamishpacha, but he's the best yeshiva boy. So actually, the Rebbe in his letter, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef answering this person, it says if they really sit and learn Torah, that impurity goes away, because he's not the cause. The parents didn't keep it. So that impurity, if he really sits and learns Torah, takes it away. So it's interesting. Rabbi Ovadia and the Rebbe said the same thing. That's why kashrut is more important, because when we eat, it actually becomes part of us. It's not something from outside. So these are the two things that we tell them to keep. There's actually another story that I heard this from Mrs. Carmeli one time. She was giving a lecture. Part of keeping of it, everything in the Torah actually has a medical or health benefit too. Not that this is the reason of the mitzvot. It's not. We keep the mitzvot because God said so. They definitely have a lot of holier reasons, not just the medical or health reasons, but again, because it's God-given, definitely is good for us health-wise too. So the story is that, there was one time, one of the laws of family purity that the rabbis did. According to the Torah, you just wait till the bleeding stops and you go to the mikveh. But the rabbis added certain things, that there has to be 7 clean days, no spotting, after the bleeding stops. So how does a woman know that she's completely clean, no spotting? So they have to check themselves inside the body. They use like these soft cotton things, and they check themselves. So if there's no blood, no stains, after 7 days, when they check it every day, they go to the mikveh. There was this lady that every time she checked herself, she would find a blood stain. So she went to the rabbi and he said, I have a problem, I can't go to the mikveh. So the rabbi said, if this is happening, you have to go to your doctor. So she went to the doctor, and right away they found a cancerous cyst. And he said, how did you find that? It came early enough, so they got rid of it. So he says, how did you realize there was no pain yet? So he said, because according to the rabbis, a woman has to check herself every time. So because I was bleeding, I checked myself, and that's why I came to you. It's amazing, it's a rabbinic law, but it actually has a benefit, even a health benefit. I know my wife said this story one time. We were in somebody's house, and then a few months later on Purim, this lady that heard the story brought a big mishloach manos to my wife. So he said, why? He says, when you said that story, I was going through the same problem myself. She was spotting. And when she went to the doctor, they did the surgery, and the cancer didn't spread too much. So that's, not something that's important. Also, another health benefit that we do have, when people keep family purity. This was an article in a newspaper over 50 or 60 years ago. The doctors found out there's a certain cancer, I think it's called the cervical cancer, that a lot of women had, not Jewish ladies. Thank God we don't live in old Europe. In old Europe, they would say, if other religions would have diseases, they would say Jews put a spell in the water. That's what pogroms happen. They used to go kill Jews. Thank God in America, people are more educated, so the doctors wanted to find out, how come the non-Jewish women get the cervical cancer more than the Jewish women? So they came with a theory. They said probably because the men circumcised, they do brit milah. But the Christians, especially in Europe, they don't do circumcision at all. And because there's an extra skin, a lot of diseases, grow there. And when they're intimate, so whatever you want to call it, goes inside the lady's body and she gets the cancer. The problem with that theory was that even Muslim women got this cancer. And they do circumcision. So it has nothing to do with the man. It's interesting, the doctors figured it out. So then they checked. They realized that Jewish men and women separate during those days of the Nida, but other people don't keep it. So they realized that's a cause. Because when the woman is bleeding, if something enters her body from outside, she's more susceptible or whatever, more vulnerable, forgive my English, to get, this type of a thing. Because whatever, the body, it's open, blood is going out. I don't know the medical thing. You have to ask a doctor exactly what it is. But it's proven by doctors that if something enters her body, so she's more vulnerable of getting diseases. But because these days, Jews, by tradition, the Torah forbids it. This has nothing to do with the mikveh, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Mikveh takes the impurity away. But just the separation, that was the cause that there was no cancer by then. So we see, the beauty of this. Yes, if we keep the sanctity of the Torah, definitely regulates our life. Yeah, we can't do everything that we want, but at the same time, in long term, brings a lot of blessings. So I think we're going to stop here. So we were able to go through 4 out of the 10 commandments. Please let the rabbi know, but I want to give a special thanks, besides to Rabbi Mahpari that actually gave the place to us. But this whole program happened because of a very humble lady that actually she's here tonight, Mrs. Lisa Cuento Zarinia. She was behind this whole thing, pushing for it to happen. She's sitting in the back of the shul. So if you have any comments, either tell Rabbi Mahpari or Mrs. Zarinia, we're going to take a break after this to see, what people's comments will be. Bezrat Hashem. And if there's time, maybe we continue the last 6. We didn't talk about how to honor in-laws. That's the most scary part. That's the next part. Honor your father and mother. So we're not going to leave it for now. We don't want to give you traumas. We do next time, Bezrat Hashem. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.